Arlo and Patsey Payne were married for 63 years. How about that for a shocker? In this day and age, you don't see that very often. I was blessed to be born to their second daughter, which made me so fortunate as to call them Grandma and Grandpa. Patsey Ann Payne died peacefully on March 7th, 2014. She was born Patsey Ann Clark to B.A. and Violet Clark, who have since passed on. And then a year after she was born, my great aunt Shirley was born. And she actually passed away a month after my grandmother this year. About 4 years after Shirley was born, in 1939, my great uncle Alvin Wesley was born, but he subsequently passed on 3 months later of pneumonia. When my grandmother was about 9 or 10 years old, she met her future husband in Canton, South Dakota. My grandfather at the time was about 11 or 12, and he saw her walking down the street, and he chased her down with his big white horse. Literally, he chased her with his big white horse. Well, he told his friends at the time that she was going to be his wife one day. And through the grapevine, she heard about that. And she said, in his dreams. But luckily, Grandpa had really good dreams, because he saw her again when she was about 14 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and he went to making his dreams come true. So when she was 16 in 1951, they got married. And then they had 63 years of good fights, bad fights, makeups, and not makeups. She was the love of my life, my grandpa said, telling me this story. With tears in his eyes, he said he had 63 years of good dreams. Well, Pamela Ann, my aunt, was born to them on October 16th in 1956 in Canton, South Dakota. And then they moved to the Great Northwest, and they moved to Renton because my grandfather was offered a job at Boeing. So the day that they were moving into their home on December 13th, 1958, my mother was born, Arla Jean. So, housewarming. On October 18th, 1960, my uncle David Allen was born. And then, on January 12th, 1964, surprise! My Aunt Julie Lynn was born. Pam married Mark Truman on December 30th, 1977, and they had 2 boys, Derek and Jeff. And then my mom, Arla, married Richard Ridley, and they had 2 girls, my sister Raquel and myself, on February 14th, 1976 was the year was when they were married. But then after divorcing Richard, she had 3 more children with my stepdad, Jeff Hahn, and those children were my brother Jeffrey, my sister Jenny Ray, and my other brother Ryan. David married Yvonne Worrell on September 10th, 1988. And then they had 2 boys, Dustin and Dylan. And then they divorced, and David remarried Gail Johnson in just last year, 2013. Julie married Mike Copeland, and they had 2 children, Amber and Kelsey. And at the time of my grandmother's death, she had 11 grandchildren and 14 and a half great-grandchildren. Grandma lived her life to please others. No one that walked into her house ever walked out hungry. She was famous for her hot dishes, and everyone loved them. She loved traveling in the fifth wheel with my grandfather. They traveled all over the United States. And she also just liked taking day trips up to Seattle to visit the archives because she was very, very interested in genealogy. Grandma was loved by many, and anyone that knew her well. She was a talker. I think that's where I get it from. She loved to tell stories about her past and present, and she boasted on her children and her grandchildren at every occasion. I remember one time my sister's first husband had a son, and when it was time for him to meet my grandmother, the whole family played this horrible trick on him, telling him that she was the meanest, orneriest person ever, and not to get on her bad side. So when he did meet her, he was scared. He was perfect gentleman, used his manners, didn't get too close to her. I mean, he was just perfect around her. Well, he did this. He walked on his tiptoes around her for about 2 weeks before he one day got really close to her and like almost touched her, and he about jumped a foot. And my grandmother was like, okay, this kid is weird. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's weird. So she finally asked, what is wrong with this kid? She asked my grandfather, what's wrong with this kid? So he told her this horrible, horrible trick that everybody was playing on her. And she laughed and laughed and laughed. She told that story so many times. You know, my grandmother was a wonderful person, and she is going to be missed tremendously and cherished forever. Thank you.